Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I am your host, Jonathan Eaterberg, and today I'm bringing you an interview with Madison Hatfield, director and star of the short film I Could Dom. Before I jump into the interview, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast player so you can get all the newest episodes as soon as they are released. If you like the interview and want to hear more, please consider leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Madison Hatfield is a writer, director, and actor born and based in Atlanta, Georgia. Her latest short film, I Could Dom, is currently on the festival circuit and has played at several Oscar-qualifying festivals, including Austin Film Festival, Cleveland International Film Festival, Atlanta Film Festival, and the Seattle International Film Festival. As an actor, she has appeared on a wide range of shows, including Atlanta on FX, Chicago Med on NBC, and The Other Black Girl on Hulu. She is proudly represented by the Gotham Group as a writer and Stuart Talent as a performer, and joins me on the podcast to talk about I Could Dom. Madison, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a treat to be here, and any chance I get to talk about my silly movie, it's a good day.
Well, silly is right. You had me laughing out loud throughout the whole film, pretty much.
Good.
I want to know where the idea came from. Tell me about what inspired this film.
Well, I definitely said the sentence "I could dom" out loud in my real life to someone, and I was laughed at, and I immediately thought, I was like, "Oh, that's such a funny title for a film," but I wasn't sure exactly, like, what the film was, and then months later, I was having a conversation, and I ended up using this analogy for myself of, like, feeling like a human soap dish, and that makes no sense for anyone who hasn't seen the film, but
Right.
after that conversation, it became very clear to me what the shape of the film was, and I sat down that night and I wrote it. I mean, I wrote it mostly all in one night, and the script, it definitely changed a little bit, but it was largely, like, the same from that sort of rapid fire session around Christmas 2022 to what is, like, on the circuit today. So it really came out once I knew what it was.
Sure. And I love the scene fairly early on in the film with your character, June. She signs up for a new dating app, and we get to see some of the guys that she's meeting on this app, and they actually kind of appear in the room with her, not just on the screen.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to shoot that scene without breaking? I'm sure there's a lot of really fun outtakes and bloopers in that scene.
I mean, we did our absolute best. So those 3 men are, like, 3 of my best friends in the world. They were the only people that I trusted to whisper that close to my face without me having a panic attack, and so I don't there's a part of the scene where they literally are, like, right next to me, and I don't know what they're saying. I remember, like, catching little pieces of it. Like, my friend Chris at one point definitely says, like, "How many buttholes do you have?" Which is just a ridiculous thing to say, but all 3 of them are such gifted, like, comedians and improvisers, and so I knew, 1, they are my best friends, so I knew if I asked them, they would, like, have to say yes. 2, I knew that they would have fun with it, and, yeah, that scene was a lot of fun to shoot. If I'm remembering correctly, that was, like, the first scene of the film that we shot.
Oh, okay.
It was definitely the first day and one of the first things that we did, and so what a way to launch into it because it's definitely got some of the most sexually explicit dialogue, and I'm very pleased with all 3 of them have fun usernames. We have Frisky Business 69 for the businessman, Masochist from a Rose, which is a play on the Seal song title, which I just find funny, and then Gimp Biscuit works on its own, but also my friend who plays that character has a Limp Bizkit cover band, and so that joke is working on, like, levels that no one even knows.
All right.
But now I'm sharing it on the podcast so the world can finally understand how funny I am because I don't think that they were sure about it. So just know that that joke really lands for me personally and anyone who knows him. But yeah, such a fun scene, such dear friends. And thank God, because it is truly alarming to have even people you care deeply about that close to your face whispering just nasty, nonsensical, sexual
Yeah.
sentences.
Now I feel like June is all of us. She's an every woman in a certain sense.
Mm.
I actually just heard a discussion on a podcast called What Am I Making with Maddie C and Beth Lee Sigorski. They were talking about imposter syndrome.
Mm.
I thought it's pretty clear that June has some imposter syndrome. She's trying to struggle with being accepted by her friends. And these are things that we deal with on a daily basis, especially with social media and all of that going on. Obviously, it's a comedy, so I don't know if you're trying to make any grand statements on any of that, but what are your kind of thoughts around this character and how she deals with her insecurities?
Yeah, I mean, we call this when we, say the title, we almost always follow it up with the tagline, which is "I could dumb a sex comedy for people pleasers." This is for me ultimately a movie about people pleasing. I think that that is the heart of it for me, because people pleasing is something that I've struggled with. I feel like my whole life, like I can't remember a time, even as a kid, where I wasn't always thinking about how the people around me were feeling and how what I said and what I did would impact them, and letting that be the sort of driving force in my words and my behaviors. And so I am always so touched by people from all walks of life coming up to me after our screenings to say that they saw themselves in June. Because I think that people pleasing is a really pervasive sort of way of living, in our society. I think especially for women, but not only for women. I did set out to talk about that. I don't think it was a it wasn't like this happy accident. It's in the script. It certainly was something that I was thinking about. I consider myself a people pleaser in recovery. I am working on it. I don't think it'll ever go away, but I certainly have a better sense of being able to identify when I'm making choices for the wrong reasons, meaning choices that I'm making for someone else first and not myself first. But I think with Jude in particular, I'm really exploring this notion of like, I think one of the greatest tragedies of people pleasing is that you lose the ability to hear your own voice first in your own head. And she is, yeah, hearing about her friends' sexual experiences and sort of thinking like, yeah, maybe I need to be doing that. And then when they tell her she can't do something, that just makes her upset, and she's like, "No, yes, I could," and
Yeah.
now she's in this position with a man who has a very strong sexual preference that she's trying to give him what she thinks he wants, and it's not aligned at all with who she is or where she is in her life and what she might actually want. But you can get to this place where you're so caught up in other people's thoughts and expectations that you truly have no idea anymore what it is that you want and you need and you desire. And so Ikadam, the short, is a proof of concept for the feature, and I think the feature lets us sort of, like, watch this through line a little bit more, but, yeah, for me, this is a story about June learning to hear her own voice first, and that's kind of step 1, and then step 2 is being able to, like, name those wants and desires out loud, and step 3 is making changes in yourself and in your life to better align yourself with those wants and desires. So, it's 100% in there, it's 100% something I set out to do, and it's 100% the movie that I needed to make for me in the journey that I'm on, and I love that it's speaking to people, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I don't want to spoil anything. And the film is a comedy. It's very funny, but as you mentioned, there's some earnest moments as well, some honest,
Yeah.
moments in there. How important was it to achieve that balance, having those laugh out loud moments, but also allowed you to be vulnerable, like you've been saying?
For me, like, humor and heart is the sort of guiding light of my career as a writer, as a filmmaker, when I'm doing my own stuff as an actor as well. So I think that humor often is what earns us those moments of vulnerability, and earnestness. I think that being able to invite people into a story that is a comedy, it's not even just, like, on its surface a comedy, like, through and through, I Could Dom was built as a comedy. It's not a secret drama, I swear. But I think being able to invite people in through laughter, giving them a situation that feels very sort of heightened and ridiculous, and then near the end, offering them a moment of real humanity that, it's very personal to me. It's very connected to me and my own experiences. And I found with a lot of different work that I've done, the more specific I get to my own journey and my own emotions, feelings, whatever it might be, the better it's able to reach people in the audience, whether it's something they dealt with directly or it just feels like very human, and we love to watch humanity on screen. So, yeah, I love comedies that are willing to get vulnerable when they've earned it.
Mhm.
So, I like to think that in I Could Dumb, we earn her little speech at the end, and then we get to laugh some more. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't end on that note, but it does, like, that heart carries us through to the end in its own way, and I really like that.
Yeah. And of course, the film doesn't work. You mentioned him a little bit earlier, the character of Jeff, who's the love interest. I feel like we don't see enough of his type of character. I mean, he's truly a nice guy. He's very caring, very very gentle. But tell me a little bit about creating that character, making him. How did you write him that way, and then also finding a perfect actor to play him?
Yeah, Jeff is such an important part of the film. This is the sexually submissive man that June goes on the date with, and that's most of the movie. Most of the movie is June and Jeff, and so I knew that I wanted to write a man who was sexually submissive, but in a more realistic way than I think what we usually would see on screen. I think the trap for a character like that is writing someone who's very awkward or meek or doesn't know how to stand up for himself, whatever that might be. And in reality, within the BDSM community, people who are sexually submissive are often not at all what we would think of as submissive in a regular social setting or in their everyday life, right? A lot of times it might be people who maybe have a lot of power and control in their job and they really enjoy having these spaces where they can kind of give that up and flip the switch a little bit. And so I wanted to really highlight the difference between June and Jeff. And even though he is sexually submissive, he's very aware of what he wants, very aware of who he is, and very capable of communicating about all of that stuff. And I also it is a rom-com for me. I do want them to ultimately end up, together. I don't think that's a spoiler if it's a rom-com. Like you probably had some idea
Yeah.
that it was gonna maybe end up okay. But because of that, when June does sort of reveal her true colors, that she is not this dom that she's presented herself to be. I wanted him to obviously feel his feelings and be able to express that, but also be able to have enough empathy to be a caring force when he realized that she needed somebody to talk to. And I think that there are a lot of great men out there. Now, we don't always see like good men on screen, especially in these like sort of dating and sexual contexts. And so, yes, writing the character of Jeff was something I was very careful about. And finding the actor, the Gimp Biscuit actor that I was mentioning earlier, he performed the role in a staged reading that we did, and he did a wonderful job. He's one of my best friends on earth. But when it came time to actually filming the short, I felt like I needed to ask him first, did he wanna do it? And we've been best friends for, like, 11, 12 years, and he was like, "I can't do it." I was like, "Okay, fair enough." And when he said no, it did make me start to think about, okay, well, then what's kind of an ideal situation for finding an actor in this, for this role? I didn't want to necessarily open it up to a casting call because it is such a sensitive subject and a sensitive character, but I also was like, okay, well, it's possible for someone to be too close to me to play this role with me. So I ended up reaching out to Derek Evans, who plays him in the film. He's an actor who I was aware of. He's also a filmmaker and very gifted at that. And in the sort of passing ways that I'd met him, I know he's a nice guy. He's very good friends with people that I love and admire. And so I was like, you know what? He has the energy that I'm looking for. I'm just gonna send him an email. So what a wild cold email for him to receive with this particular role, but to his credit, he was like, "Hell yeah, let me read it," and he loved it, and he was such a curious actor. He had a lot of questions about, this character and again, like, thinking about sexual submissiveness and what that would mean for the actual person outside of sexual situations, and so we got to really have such great conversations, and I think he brings such a genuine sweetness to the role, but also, as I was saying, like that self-assurance. I think he's magnetic to watch on screen, and every showing we've had, I have people ask about Jeff. I have people wanting to come up to me and talk about Jeff afterwards, and that is, I think it is on the page, but it's also a huge credit to Derek and the life that he brought to that role, and I'm so grateful that he answered that out of the blue email when I sent it.
Definitely. And obviously, as a short film, you just have a few main actors. You're only dealing with a few settings throughout the film. But what sort of challenges did you run into in getting this film made?
Well, I mean, As with any as with any independent film, you gotta think about where's the money gonna come from, but we were very fortunate to have a successful crowdfunding campaign, that got us most of the way there. I partnered with a production company here in Atlanta that gave me all the gear for free. My DP came on for free, my producers came on for free. I've done a lot of independent work here in Atlanta, so I think that this was really it really felt like kind of a culmination of the community that I've built here and the goodwill that I've built. I think we were successful in our crowdfunding campaign because I do have a track record as someone who gets films done and would do something that people could be proud to be sort of connected to and a part of. And yeah, so but as always, it's you gotta find the money, even when you are lucky enough to be able to do something on a smaller budget. We we had situations where, like, we picked an Airbnb to shoot most of the movie, and we were honest with the owner, and we were like, "Yeah, we are shooting." He was like, "Oh, okay, no problem. I'm just gonna tack on $1,000." And in an indie project, like, $1,000 is a lot of money, so we, like, stalked this guy online. We saw that he was, like, maybe into he produced commercials and political videos, so it was like, "Okay, well, maybe he would be interested in, like, being a producer." So we were sort of like, "Hey, man, if you're willing to like take half this off, you'd be an associate producer. If you take all of it off, according to our Seed and Spark, like that's executive producer level. So you could do that too." And he was like, "Okay, send it to me." And we sent it, and he was like, "I love this. Take the 1,000 off." And so we got a new EP, and we paid just the base level for that Airbnb. You always have to ask.
Yeah.
We also weren't sure about the restaurant for a long time. I was really circling this, like, newer restaurant that I knew wouldn't have had a lot of people already asking to film there for a low budget, and it just, like they kept not getting back to me, and we ended up having, like, a fundraising event during our crowdfunding campaign at this sandwich restaurant, and they have a sister restaurant that's more of like a bar, and we brought them a bunch of business on a random Thursday night for this crowdfunding event, and, it was kind of the perfect opportunity to be like, "Well, we also need a place to shoot these restaurant scenes," and they were like, "Oh, yeah. Why don't you use Banshee?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, that's exactly what I hope you say," and
Nice.
they were so generous to give it to us for, like, $750 for the day, which, I know this restaurant has been used in an Amex commercial, and I know they got paid probably north of $10,000 for that, so they knew how much they could charge a production, but they understood the kind of production that we were, and I remember afterwards, thanking our representative who was there with us that day, and she was like, "We all started somewhere." And I just thought that was such a beautiful reminder that, like, within your community, whether, it's another film team or a restaurant or an art studio or a gallery, whatever it might be, people are all on their own journeys, and they remember that people helped them early on theirs, and so it was this whole, I think, production for me was a great lesson in feeling confident enough to ask for what I needed, and I was, more often than not, really blown away by how much I was receiving from those asks, and yeah, so I think logistics are always tricky, but we really got lucky, and it was a beautiful time.
Yeah, definitely not being a people pleaser with some of those asks, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's truly like there was a past version of me that was like, just asking those questions is gonna make them so mad that they're never gonna wanna speak to me again, which is, like, not that's not how it works, right? If you ask for something, people have the option to say no, and then you both just move on from it, and it's okay, but there are these, like, chemical misfirings happening in a lot of our brains that are telling us that just seeking something for our own good is selfish and bad, and we are bad to even ask for it. And I just am learning that that's not true. And yeah, I think that that's what's so beautiful for me about this film is that the making of it was such an important part of my journey to not being a people pleaser anymore. And it was an affirmation that what I've been learning, about myself that's not true, right? It truly wasn't true. Like
Right.
it all was like it was like these final, like, concrete, tangible examples of, no, you can ask for things and it's okay, and you can do something for yourself and it's okay, and something beautiful can come from it. So it's a really great like art imitates life or art guides life along kind of moment for me.
Sure. Now, I have a couple of questions not specifically related to the film, but before I move on to those, is there anything else you want to touch on about I Could Tom?
No, I mean, we are sort of slowing down our festival run. We've been out here over a year, but we're excited to go to Seattle in May, and we'll probably have at least a few more here and there. But it is a proof of concept for a feature, as I mentioned. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can always find me on Instagram at manhat31, and I would love to talk to you about what is still in store for June. But yeah, no, you touched on all my favorite things to talk about. So I feel good.
Awesome. Well, this might be the hardest question I ask, but if you had to pick your top three films of all time, what would they be?
Oh my gosh. This is such a hard question. I'm gonna say because I used to ask a similar question to this when I would teach writing classes, and I was like, "What are your top 5 films today? Just today, that you can think of today." So today, when I think of my favorite films of all time, Singing in the Rain, which is on this poster behind me, is a favorite movie of mine since I was a kid. When I was a teenager, I saw Amelie, the French film, and that one has always stuck with me as a favorite as well. And then I'm gonna go with When Harry Met Sally today. As a rom-com lover, I do think it is the gold standard to which we all aspire, and I could watch it every day, I think, and never get tired of it. So those are gonna be my 3 today.
Definitely some good ones there. Now, similar question, if you could invite any three movie characters to your next dinner party, who would they be and why?
So, one of my favorite characters that I remember as a kid, like, first, like, really understanding, like, "Oh, I love that character." I think she was the first, like, impression I ever tried to do as well, is Marissa Tomei's character from My Cousin Vinny, Mona Lisa Vito. I think she's the perfect woman. I love the way she talks, and I love the way she dresses, and she's so smart. I think she would be great to have at dinner. So that's definitely the first one. I think for just chaos value, I want Nick Cage's character from Moonstruck, Robbie Camilleri. He lost his hand, he lost his bride, famously. He's such a I love that movie so much. I think it's so weird and only itself, and there are a lot of characters from that film that I would have, but I think I'd have to pick Nicolas Cage because he's off the wall. We wouldn't know. And then, I don't know, I'm trying to think of, like, someone from a more recent film that I could ask over, and the only the only thing I'm thinking of some of the most fun I had at a movie theater last year was in Twisters, the sequel to Twister. I loved Glenn Powell in that movie. I think I'm asking Glenn Powell from Twisters to come in. I don't remember his name from the film, but he has a lot of knowledge of tornadoes, and I just think he would be a great person around the table, and he probably can, like, grill. So, that's good because 'cause I'm not
There you go.
I guess Robbie could bring bread. He's a baker. Mona Lisa, she doesn't cook. So, I'm counting on Glenn Powell to bring the tongs and grill us up some meat.
Fantastic. I want to be at that barbecue too, so make sure you invite me.
Absolutely. Everyone's invited. Everyone's invited.
Now, do you have any books that you could recommend that you've read recently or really enjoy that could be fiction or nonfiction and don't have to be related to movies?
Yes. I A book that I love for I think anyone who is interested in storytelling at all is it's a nonfiction-ish book from one of my favorite short story writers who's George Saunders, and he has a book called A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, which is kind of a book version of his Syracuse class on Russian short stories. So the way the book is structured is that you read the short story, then you read kind of an essay version of his lecture on that short story, and then the third piece is a little bit broad it's like a slightly broader essay about art and life and writing and whatever it might be. I absolutely loved reading that book because 1, it exposed me to some Russian short stories I'd never read before, and 2, I just think George Saunders' insights on writing and storytelling and art in general are so both funny, and perceptive, but also really profound. And I would be like crying. I'm like, this is about writing. Why am I crying? And so I highly recommend that book, especially for storytellers, but also like his other books too. 10th of December is probably my favorite short story collection of all time. And his novel, Lincoln in the Bardo, is just a complete innovation of the form of a novel, and I recommend it to everyone. So those are definitely on my list. And then I have a fantasy trilogy that I love that people don't always know, but the first one is called The Bear and the Nightingale. It's by Katherine Arden, and it's based in Russian folklore. So it's a very cold novel, which is either like great for the summer because you're feeling hot, or save it for the winter when you're going to be as cold as these characters are.
Yeah.
But really sort of stunning visual storytelling, and also it does weave in real historical elements with the folklore, and so I also learned a lot about Russian culture and Russian history, and it's just, like, great fantasy story. It's lots of action and adventure, but also a romance, which I require in my books usually. So I definitely recommend, it's called the Winternight Trilogy, but the first one is called The Bear and the Nightingale, and if you like that one, you'll like the other 2.
Wonderful. Well, we'll put some links to all those books so that people can check them out. And who else from the world of film should I have on the podcast?
Oh my gosh. I have had the absolute pleasure of being on the circuit for over a year, which means that I have met just countless amazing filmmakers. And so I feel honestly like picking favorite children right now. So I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna go with the first people that come into my head that I think would be fun to talk to. One of my favorite festival buddies is Jack Dunphy. I was on the circuit with him with his short animated hybrid documentary. Absolutely fantastic. It's called Bob's Funeral. So I love him. I love Alex Heller. She and I were on the circuit for a film called Holiday House of hers, but she now already has another short called The Debaters that premiered at Sundance. But she is such a wonderful person and a delight to talk to. And then I would also say Talia Lachey. I think it's Talia Levin. Talia Lachey is like her Instagram name. I'm so sorry. But Talia Levin, she has a film called Make Me a Pizza that is off the walls and is playing everywhere. Every midnight block in America should be playing this film. I don't want to tell you too much about it, but I think those 3 would be a lot of fun to talk to for you, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, we'll reach out to them and see if we can get them on the podcast.
Yes, please do.
And last, before we wrap up, I know you said you're working on a feature version of this film, but anything else you have lined up? And also just drop your social media one more time if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, up next, we're still on the festival circuit, so I'm focused on that. But my next big independent endeavor will be turning this into a feature. I'm paying my bills by directing verticals. If you know what those are, those like soap operas on your phone. Sometimes people get ads for them, so you may be familiar with this, but what a wild, I'm calling it my vertical year. So I'm doing as many of those as I can, as my brain will allow me to do, so that I can pay my rent. But don't watch those unless you love them, in which case please watch them. But yeah, working on that, and then just doing some writing and getting some more spec scripts out in the world, out on the town, as they say. But yeah, from a filmmaking perspective, I do think the next big thing is going to be this feature. And yeah, please follow along. My Instagram is basically my business website now. You won't see anything about my real life. It's all just I could dom and career. But my handle is madhat MADHAT 31, and I would love to see you on the internet. Any of you.
Wonderful. Well, Madison, thank you so much for the time today. Really loved the film and really appreciated being able to hear some of the stories that went into making it.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you, yeah, talking to independent short filmmakers, because we do love what we do, and not everybody gets to watch what we make. So any chance we have truly to talk about our work and the amazing teams that we brought together to make it does make us feel really special. So thank you for your service.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you again to my guest today, Madison Hatfield. Her film, I Could Dom, has been playing film festivals for several months and can next be seen at the Seattle International Film Festival this May. The Oscar Project podcast is written and produced by me, Jonathan Eaterberg, with editing assistance from Joshua Eaterberg. If you want more movie coverage, check out the Oscar Project online at theoscarproject.substack.com. I'll be back on Friday with Amanda Cusick to discuss the 1928 film A Woman of Affairs. And next Tuesday, I'll have an interview with Jessica Rowlands, director of the short film Rise. Until then, I hope to see you at the movies.